what do you do my lekker heading? I didn't start streaming it. Oh, okay, I was worried now. You know, my mouse gave in. I'm gonna be 2 minutes late. My mouse gave in. It's moving, but it won't click. Luckily, I have another mouse. Okay, thank you. I was just worried now because I literally just started and you telling me lekker heading. What did I even do? Did I stream before I wanted to or what? Yeah, I did change it this time. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Klaasen Chess, and blessed Good Friday to everybody. So, um, yeah, so tonight we're going to be doing, starting with my lecture, How to Be the Grandmaster, part 1. And first of all, I would just like to thank all the new followers. Thank you and welcome. And Yeah, so this is the first different show. I've just been playing online, and this will be something new, and I'll be doing different things as well in the future. So watch the space. Yeah, so let's get to the game. And yeah, you guys can also comment, ask me questions, um, anything about the game or what I was thinking, and so on. And I'll gladly answer you as we continue. Yeah, and then of course, if you like what you're seeing and you want to follow me, uh, and you are not a member of Twitch, just simply go to twitch.com, quickly sign up. It's for free, and search my channel, Kelvin Klaasen Chess, and then just click on the purple heart at the top, which would say follow. Okay, so let's get to the game. So I'm going to show you a game this evening that I played at the last World Olympiad in Batumi, Georgia. I was a part of a team of South Africa consisting of 5 players. And for this match, it's a team event. If you're not familiar with the World Olympiad, it's a team event, basically almost like a World Cup to see who's the best team of 5 players. 4 players play at a time. So you have one reserve or one guy that sets out. So we usually rotate the players. And for this event, I was sitting on board 3. And this match, I was playing against Mohammed Dastan, Grandmaster Mohammed Dastan from Turkey. And the Turkish team was quite a formidable sight because, yeah, South Africa at the moment only has one Grandmaster, and in fact, it doesn't listen. Sorry, it doesn't stay in South Africa right now. So South Africa has no Grandmasters residing within the country, and we only have one Grandmaster. So looking at the Turkish team, um, they all 4 boards that were challenging us were all Grandmasters. So thank you for following. Let me just add something here to my stream. Yeah, I think I should add an alert box. Okay, I'll do that again. But thank you very much, everybody, for following. I will get back to that in a moment. I'll fix it during my break. But for now, let's get going. So, like I said, we played Turkey for this match, and yeah, the players that played with me at the start for this matchup, Daniel Caudry was on 1, International Master Daniel Caudry. On 2 was International Master Watu Kabese, and I was sitting on 3, and on board 4 was, I think, International Master Johannes Mabusela. So yeah, this was my second Olympiad, and it's quite an honor to participate in it, especially with my teammates. It's really such a pleasure to play with all of them, and yeah, you get to see all the top players. My first Olympiad was in Baku, Azerbaijan, 2 years prior to this one. This Olympiad game that I'm going to show you was played in 2018, and yeah. So okay, I'll tell you a bit more about it, but let's get going with the game. So Mohammed Dastan, one thing about him, at that time he looked quite young. Um, he looked very young, but I think he was 21 years old at the time. So quite a promising player, very strong young player. I checked quite a lot of his games out at that time, and I even checked a few now again, and sorry, I noticed that he drew against Neal Sarin. If you guys know Neal, drew against Neal Sarin with the black pieces also during this year. All right, so I was playing with the white pieces, and I started off with Pawn to d4, and my opponent has many options here. He plays quite a few openings against d4, one of them being the King's Indian defense, and I also noticed him playing the Queen's Gambit accepted. And the other option that he also had, which he played against me this time, was the Dutch defense. So the Dutch defense, not the easiest opening to play. As you can see, the king is already slightly open from the get-go. So I would not recommend beginners playing this opening. You could quite easily get into trouble. So just to show you a quick example of a silly line that I've seen. For instance, if white plays here, this is one tricky line. If black chases the bishop, then I've seen moves like e4 and or wait, I think it's first bishop h4 and after g5. If you think you're going to trap the bishop after something like bishop g3 and f4, then something like e3, and after captures, ouch, the king is in checkmate. So there's some obvious drawbacks to this first move f5, but if you know your stuff, then you should be okay. But it's not the most popular opening for black. So my opponent decides to play this kind of dynamic opening against me, seeing his opponent being me being a lot lower rated than him. His rating was 2,560, and my rating at that time was 2,260. So it's about a 300 rating gap. What I can say about South African players compared to the international scene is that I would say that we tend to be slightly underrated. So I wouldn't say that I was a full 300 rating points below him strength-wise, but yeah, my opponent was still quite strong. So anyway, so after f5, I played c4, knight to f6, knight to c3, and pawn to d6. So pawn to d6 kind of indicates that my opponent is going to go into a Leningrad variation of the Dutch defense. Another option would be to go pawn to e6 and an eventual d5, c6, going for a stonewall setup. So that would be another option, but I kind of knew that my opponent goes into this Leningrad setup, going over, having gone over his games prior to playing this. So I went knight f3, pawn to g6, and my opponent's setup is going to be placing the bishop on g7 and castling. And if you look at the pawn structure, it kind of resembles King's Indian defense, which I mentioned earlier is also part of his repertoire, so it completely makes sense for him to play this. The only difference is that the f5 pawn is already advanced. So yeah, King's Indian players should be more or less comfortable with the pawn structure. All right, so pawn to g6, and I chose bishop to f4 here. Now there's many options against the Dutch defense, and I think one of the most popular setups is for white to go pawn to g3 over here. Pawn to g3 and develop fianchetto the bishop, the light squared bishop. It's a solid setup. It also keeps your king safe usually when you fianchetto the side. So that would also be a good option. But for this game, I decided to go bishop f4, and I'll tell you a bit more about it. So bishop g7, pawn to e3. So I'm basically going for a traditional Queen's Gambit setup structure with the pieces set up quite classically. But interestingly enough, I did not find too many games when preparing. I did not find too many games with this configuration for white against the Dutch. Were you nervous playing a GM? Yeah, okay. I guess I can also tell you guys a bit about the feeling, the start of the game, and so on. Of course, I was nervous playing a Grandmaster, staying in South Africa, like I mentioned before. I was quite nervous, but I I think with my experience that I have, and you will also discover the more you play, the more experience you get, the more you calm down, and you realize that being too excited or too nervous during a game can also negatively affect your performance. So yes, I was slightly nervous, more excited for the occasion, but of course you can feel it when you're playing a Grandmaster. Um, you know you're gonna get a tough game. Um, so yeah, nerves was definitely part of it. But this was not my first Grandmaster that I played, so I think I kind of handled the situation okay for now. So, thank you for asking, Multi Shake Shake. Yes, so I chose this setup, and the interesting thing about also playing Grandmasters, what I can also say is most Grandmasters are quite souped up with their opening knowledge. So what they're going to play, they're going to know well, and this was also part of my um, criteria when selecting what to play. Sometimes it is actually good to get your opponent, to surprise your opponent, especially a Grandmaster, um, with something new, something fresh, because they are quite strong theoretically. So if you can catch him a bit off, then it can also only mean good for you. So bishop to f4, and yeah, so in this position, I expected black to castle, because that's the logical continuation. Okay, I think my opponent thought a while here, because it's not the most popular setup for white. And so my opponent wasn't whipping out the move, so to speak, which also gave me a bit of confidence. And my opponent, like I said, at this moment, my opponent gave it a bit of thought, and he actually played pawn to h6. So pawn to h6 was the first moment where I had to sit back and think a bit and not rely on my preparation. Um, and I had to, of course, ask myself, what is he up to? What does he want to do with this move? Can I continue as per my original plan? Should I shift my plan a bit, or what to do? So I also paused a bit. So obviously my opponent wants to go g5 here, and my bishop has to drop back, but I couldn't see anything too dramatic. So okay, I decided to continue with my normal plan, but coming back, if my opponent castled, I had an interesting idea. Now, I don't think that this move that I was going to play, and which occurred also in the game, is a theoretical move. I believe there's probably some normal moves like bishop e2 or bishop d3, probably bishop e2, castle. But the move that I had in store, and it's interesting that I used my engine to run in such a position. I can't remember for how long, but the move that the engine recommended looked a bit odd to me, but the engine really liked it, and it seemed quite interesting. So this is the move that I wanted to play. Pawn to c5. And yes, what are we doing? Why are we advancing so quickly? c5 hits the structure over here, but it's kind of well supported. So what's my idea? Let's see. My idea is to develop this guy over here to c4. So if my opponent, let's say my opponent plays a normal developing move like knight c6, then the whole point would be bishop to c4, check, and how to get out of the check. So if my opponent goes d5, then yes, he would gain a tempo. The bishop would have to run again. Let's say I put my bishop on e2, and then I think I would have accomplished what I wanted to, because now all of a sudden the e5 square has been considerably weakened, and my pieces, my knight on f3, my bishop on f4, and my pawn on d4 are taking quite a bit of control of the e5 square. And of course I would be thinking about leaping forward at some point, occupy that nice square. So that doesn't look really appetizing to black going d5. So what other options does he have? Could perhaps go king h8, also a natural looking move. Knight g5 already looks slightly scary, but I think a simple castle would be sufficient to get a comfortable position here for white. Yes, I also had I had to look at a few ideas for black. One of the ideas could be to go knight h5, trying to get the bishop pair. And I wouldn't mind that, because maybe I could just play something like h3 and threaten to get my bishop out of the knight's eye. So captures, and I think the structure still looks nice, because these two pawns are controlling the center quite well. So I'm limiting this idea of black going e5, and I'm also planning on playing rook to e1, and maybe an eventual queen d2 and rook b1, and perhaps a3 and b4 at some point. So yes, so I was quite happy with that. Another potential move for black could be maybe something like knight e4. That's also a decent move. I think one of the best tries for black. And okay, I can maybe either h3 is another possibility, either take as well, maybe rook c1, even rook e1, possibilities. Okay, so, and of course maybe my opponent can also play e6, but I would have just castled. Okay, so that was the point of c5. Of course, black capturing on c5 doesn't make any sense at all, because I could capture, and yeah, the e5 square is again creaking, and this doesn't look good for black with the same check. And yeah, even a potential knight g5 or castling. Sometimes I've also looked at ideas like even like the crazy or aggressive looking h4, h5 can also be a possibility. Okay, so getting back to my game, he played pawn to h6, and considering g5 not being such a huge threat, I decided to continue with my, so to speak, novelty, and I played pawn to c5. And this is where my opponent started thinking again. So this definitely caught him off guard. And yeah, again, this was also a good sign, because usually if you're playing a Grandmaster, they will be playing the opening fast. They will be playing confidently, and they will also be intimidating you with that. So in that respect, with my opponent, they're using more time than I was using. I was playing quite fast because I was still in my prep. So that gave me confidence. I got a chance to walk around a bit, walk off some of the nerves, and my opponent was thinking for quite a while. Okay, he played pawn to g5, continuing with his initial idea. I went bishop g3, and again he sank into some thought. Okay, so the next move kind of surprised me. I was expecting castling, and yet again after castling, and bishop c4 check with similar ideas. Um, but my opponent decided to play c6. And I was not sure what to think about this move. And of course, I'm thinking, should I just continue with my usual plan? And it looked good. C6, what is it doing? It's controlling the d5 square and b5, but what is it really doing for black? So I continued bishop to c4. And now my opponent is actually starting to get into some slight trouble or positional pressure. Now, the one thing that grandmasters also do, or do not like to allow, is when they are playing lower rated players, they don't want to be squeezed. Grandmasters don't want to have a lack of plans. They don't want to be passive. They always want to be active. They would rather get into some dynamic double-edged positions and try to outplay their opponents, their lower rated opponents, rather than being slightly worse and not having good play, not having active play. So yet again, my opponent had the option of playing d5, but this was of course too passive for his liking, and my pieces are so nicely placed, and sometimes I can even consider h4 again in this position, trying to weaken the king side. So my opponent again took his time, and I kind of was wondering, and this is what I was doing. Now, usually when your opponent is thinking long, you should also try to use your time. And I started thinking to myself at the board, okay, what can my opponent do here? I like my position. I'm not sure what he can do to make me not like it. So let's try to figure out what he can do to bother me. So what can he do to bother me? My opponent at the moment can't castle because of this lovely bishop beaming down there. So he can't castle. So he needs to do something. If he can't castle, he needs to develop some pieces. But developing a piece to d7, either one of these pieces would leave that pawn in a bit of a problem. So there's already pressure, and that's, I think, what's also the drawback behind the c6 move by black. It kind of weakens this d4, this d6 square. So what can happen? What can happen? And I came to the conclusion that my opponent has to try and get rid of my nice bishop. So how can he chase it without d5? So eventually I came to the conclusion that maybe b5, and that is what he did. So pawn to b5, and what to do? I can in passant if I want to, and keep my bishop there. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't like that because now I'm swapping off one of my middle pawns for a side pawn, and now you can also play b5 or still d5, and it doesn't look as horrible. So and even queen takes b6 is also another possibility, being active down there. So I didn't want to give my opponent these active ideas. So I just kept the tension and played bishop to b3, keeping the lock on his king. So same question. What is my opponent going to do next? And he lashed out with pawn to a5. Right, so it's clear that he still wants to get rid of this bishop by pushing a4. And I had a couple of options to try and keep it on that diagonal. And I decided to go with pawn to a4. Sorry, pawn to a3. Pawn to a3. So what I wanted to show you was, okay, a4 also looked like a good option, but what I didn't like about it was that after pawn to b4, my knight would have to move backwards. But yeah, I think it's bad. Just instinctively, I didn't want to play my knight backwards. You know, when you're playing such a strong opponent, you want to be on top of him. You want to put pressure on him. You don't want to give him a moment's breath to counter. So knight to e2 just instinctively didn't look like something I want. But in hindsight, okay, this is also a possibility with my other knight, perhaps having some possibilities. Um, yeah, so that would have been an option as well. But I kind of like what I did. I played a3, and now if my opponent goes a4, then I would simply drop back. So, so I have um, stopped my opponent's threat for now. So what to do? He still can't castle. He doesn't want to play d5 and compromise. What to do? So my opponent, question is, can my opponent play on c5? Yes, he can play on c5. I was ready for that, but I was still gonna decide what to do here. I had a few good-looking options, and I will show you a bit more of that after pretty soon, because things might happen. Uh, Something similar might happen in the game. So instead of pawn takes pawn, my opponent decided to develop with a knight a6. Let's see. Okay, so thanks, Lone Pawn, for asking the question. How much pressure of having to contribute a point to the team score affect you, and how describe how your team members handle this? So it's a it's a team event, so it's different to individual tournaments. There's pressure on you from just yourself representing your country at the highest level. There's pressure on you from your opponents. This team, this Grandmaster team, Turkey is quite a strong team, and pressure from my fellow uh, teammates as well. All of my teammates are quite serious chess players, and they try to do their best. So usually, if you're playing a good game and you mess it up somewhere, then you're gonna hear it afterwards by some of your teammates, especially the more experienced guys. I remember in my first Olympiad, I had one or two hiccups where I had winning positions and then I draw eventually, and I got a bit of uh, talking to afterwards. And of course, the pressure is also there because 4 out of the 5 uh, teammates will play in a match. So if you don't do well, if you don't play at your best and get results, then there's a good chance that you won't play the next match as well. And of course, like all chess players, you want to play everything. So yeah, there's quite a bit of pressure. Um, and my teammates, I think they also feel the pressure or felt the pressure. But camaraderie also helps. I think we also do build a good team spirit. So yeah, it's pressure. It's fun also. You don't get to play grandmasters every day. You don't get to play and then get up and walk around and look at Fishy Anand playing, or um, look at Fabiano Caruana playing, and so on. So it was an immense honor and it was fun. Pressure, but it's welcomed pressure. So yeah, okay. What was the time control at this stage? I think the time control for this event was something like, phew, can't remember now. Maybe, if I'm correct, maybe 2 hours aside, or is it 1.5 hours aside with 30-second increment? And then after 40 moves, you get another half an hour, something like that. So the time control was quite long. It was quite nice. I prefer that time control. And yeah, so at this moment, my opponent has used a bit more time than myself, but I also started thinking now because my opponent is posing some threats. I'm out of my preparation, and yeah, I need to deal with these threats. So knight to a6, and now my opponent is applying more pressure to this pawn twice. So this was a big moment for me. He's got a real threat now, and now I need to spend some time, some energy. Okay, I think I used a few minutes. The adrenaline was pumping as well because I saw an idea, and of course I have a few options over here. I can play. Let's see. I can play, for instance, pawn takes d6, e takes d6, and then castle, and then I've parried the threat of losing the pawn on c5. And I think white still looks good. I still have this bishop beaming down there, and yeah, probably my opponent needs to do something like knight c6, knight c7, and perhaps one day bishop e6. So and I can continue with rook e1, rook c1, very natural moves. Rook c1 also coming. And one day I can even think about pushing e4. That break in e4, especially my opponent still, his king is still stuck in the middle, would be a definite idea. So yeah, just to show you an example of the danger here. If my opponent would play knight e4, this is now a possible variation that could have happened. Then knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, and knight to e5 would be an excellent idea, opening up the queen. And yeah, if my opponent decides to grab this piece here, then I think it should be over soon. With the queen and bishop combining over there, and if king d7, something like b takes e5 with the threat of rook a d1 with monstrous threats, pawn to e6, queen f7, everything is hanging in this position. So back to the game. So c takes d6 also looked quite promising, but I was stuck on this idea of mine of keeping my pawn on c5. So in this position, I decided to go boldly with castling. So I made my move confidently. My opponent still a bit slow, and I think definitely not happy with the way he started. Also went into thought here, and big question is, of course, can he capture the pawn twice? And if he doesn't capture the pawn, what to do? Developing the bishop to b7 doesn't look pretty, to say the least. d5 probably still an option, but it's becoming worse and worse with white being fully developed. Of course, I castled because now I can say I'm ready for the attack. I can start thinking of aggressive intentions. That is usually my style. I like to develop my pieces, build up, and then attack in a classical sense. So yes, Leighton, if he captures on c5, that does definitely, in general, if he captures on c5, then that in general weakens the e5 square. That was part of my theme with the whole bishop c4 check, provoking him to play d5. Same goes with d takes c5. You are 100% correct over there. Let's see. Did you have a daily routine during this event, as in preparation wise? So yes, any serious chess player should have a daily routine, especially at such huge events and even at normal weekend events and so on. You should try to have a routine, especially if the event is quite long, longer than 2 or 3 days, because the body does tend to stick to what it's used to. And if you are used to, you should obviously know when you are most productive, when you can do your best work and studying and preparation. So if you are used to doing your prep certain time at night, try to stick to that time. Try to eat, go and eat at the same times. And what I usually did was I tried to get in enough sleep, and in the mornings I would go to breakfast, get back from breakfast, check my possible opponents, and at the Olympiad you usually get the draw who you are playing at 10 a.m. The previous evening they released the draw, as in you get to see which teams are playing against each other, but you do not know yet who you are playing specifically because the teams can select a 4 from 5 players potentially. So in the morning you get to see specifically who you are playing. So I prepare, and then I rest again, double check again. But I like to get done an hour before the time, take a shower, get awake. So yeah, I would recommend that you stick to a certain routine. Try to eat the same stuff as well. Don't go crazy, especially if you're traveling. And so that when you get to the board, your body is used to it. Your body knows it's time to switch on. Your brain as well. So yeah, routine very important. Um, okay, let's see. Um, Yeah, of course, Leighton. So I'm enticing my opponent to capture on c5, and my opponent is running out of nice moves here. He's still, I think, his main dilemma here, amongst all of it, is he still can't castle, and he can't get rid of my bishop on this diagonal. So my opponent decided to bite the bullet, and he captured on c5. Okay, so can anybody suggest or any suggestion to what I played or what was my idea? What to do? The pawn takes pawn. What's white's options over here? So I must admit, white has a few good moves here. Why does white have a few good moves if logically he only has one move to recapture his pawn? Well, in chess you have different elements that play a factor in the evaluation of the position to say who's better, who's standing better, and whose position is worse. So there's a few elements like, of course, your king safety. So my opponent's king is not as safe as mine, and also the amount of material. So who's got more pieces on the board? So my opponent is leading with one pawn, but there's also other factors like pawn structure. Whose pawn structure is more healthy? Whose pawns are standing well and supporting the pieces? And piece placement and piece development. So my opponent is a pawn up, but the knight on the side is not such a great piece. His bishop over there is not developed, and his pawns are hemming the bishop in. His bishop, that's a decent bishop, a decent knight. Um, but yeah, his king is a problem, and his pawn structure is not ideal. In fact, in this position, I think black would probably just prefer his pawn to be on f7, and that is um, and you can see it kind of clearly when I mentioned earlier on that the Dutch defense is a bit of a risky opening, pushing that pawn that's so close to your king forward and exposing your king. Here we can see some problems. Okay, so uh, pawn takes pawn. What did I do? I leaped forward and played knight to e5. So this is already time for action. Um, I must say, if I was 10 years younger, I would feel slightly uncomfortable, or maybe 15 years younger when I was a very young chess player. I didn't like sacrificing pawns. I didn't like giving up material. Um, but as you get older and more experienced in chess, you realize, like I mentioned, these different factors. You could be slightly down on material, but if your other factors are going up, for instance, my piece placement is quite nice, strong knight. I've got a good bishop, two bishops. My pieces are all placed well. And my queen, in fact, is also eyeing the square for future, where she would be dangerous, very dangerously placed. So I do have
good pieces. And I also have an immediate threat. Of course, I'm threatening this pawn that is hanging. The knight wants to capture over there. So my opponent needs to solve that problem. If he would capture over here, for instance, then I have a variety of things that I can do. I could capture over there, maybe queen b6, and then recapture my pawn over there. And I would have regained my pawn and also still have quite a nice position with my pieces flooding the center. So my opponent cannot just go on a capture frenzy. He needs to sort out the pawn that is hanging. So I was quite excited about this because, and my heart was pumping because I'm sacrificing a pawn against a Grandmaster. Yes, so it's nerve-wracking. So my opponent played the best move in the position. He played pawn to c4, which I expected. So in this scenario, I cannot capture on c6. He's attacking my bishop because now he would attack my knight and both pieces would be hanging at the same time. So that's definitely not what I want or what I wanted. So after c4, I simply dropped back. So I switched diagonals, and this I had in mind because now I still have the pressure, the threat of c6, and now my bishop over here is eyeing this slightly weak pawn as well. Yes, he has a bishop that's protecting it, but I like my bishop over there, and it's, this guy on c8 still doesn't have a bright future, so he's going to have to be stuck protecting that guy for a while. So, okay, my opponent needs to protect c6. Or what else then? So I'm a pawn down with beautiful pieces. The least my opponent can try is to keep the pawn. So, okay, my opponent now went into deep thought again. Yeah, he played a move that I didn't expect, but again, looking at this position, maybe there's not so many options for him. So the move that he made, it looked very, very ugly. So the move that he made was knight to b8. So he's protecting his c6 pawn by undeveloping that guy, and the knight is screaming out. The knight is not happy. Yeah, so usually you don't want to undevelop your pieces, and knight b8 is definitely not a move you want to play. Question is, how do you develop or how do you protect the c6 pawn? Bishop b7 isn't possible because of bishop takes f5, then everything collapses. My opponent can maybe try bishop d7, but now the queen is blocked, and I could potentially play something like the thematic break here. This pawn structure over here reminds me a bit of the Catalan pawn structure that can happen. Now, if you're a Catalan player, you usually have a bishop on g2 beaming down this diagonal to the a8 rook, and this is when black usually captures, accepts the gambit on c4, and usually in the Catalan you aim for this break on d5. So that pawn break over there would completely disrupt this pawn chain, and after d5, something like pawn takes pawn, my pieces again would flood the center. Look at these two proud knights. Um, and something like maybe knight takes knight, queen takes, whoa, not even queen takes, queen h5 would be mate into. So definitely not knight takes knight. So I mean, already you can see my pieces, my knights look brilliant, and this bishop is eyeing that square that can potentially also be a problem for black. So this is a big advantage. Um, can black castle here? I don't think so, because with my queen over there and my knight aiming at that bishop, I can simply capture, get rid of the protection with check, And after something like bishop takes, knight takes bishop, and I would be a piece up. So pawn to d5 break would be quite nice against bishop d7. So what to do is the c6 pawn is hanging. Maybe my opponent could have played queen b6 perhaps. But okay, he's throwing his pieces towards the queen side, and his main problem is actually getting his king safe on the king side. So queen b6 is a possibility. Yeah, I still would have decent moves. Yeah, maybe queen f3, perhaps hitting the f5 pawn, and also eyeing that diagonal over there. Sometimes I also have this a4 move, and sometimes also this d5 break. Um, so yeah, so my opponent. Okay, by the way, I think that maybe the best try for black was to simply just ignore the threat and castle. Maybe castle and just say, okay, I'm going to lose the pawn. I was a pawn up. I'll give you the pawn back. And now after maybe knight takes pawn, queen e8, and maybe knight back. White still has a dominating position, but his king is at least safe and he can at least carry on for the moment. I think another possibility would be knight takes pawn up, a pawn up. So that would also look good. I would definitely consider doing that. So I think that would probably be the best option for black. Another, okay, yeah, okay. Let's continue with the game. So instead, my opponent played knight to b8, and okay. So what I'm thinking now is I've got my opponent slightly on the ropes. I've played quite a few grandmasters in my time. I've been in control for moments. And what I can tell you is grandmasters are very, very tough and resilient and tenacious. So yes, my opponent is playing backwards, but what also went through my mind is I am still a pawn down, and at the end of the day, if I do not break through and show my advantage in one way or another, my opponent can still prevail. So I need to keep on being active. I need to keep on being intense, and yeah. So no time to slouch. I need to put my opponent under pressure. So here is another moment that I'm quite proud of. This idea is quite nice to see. So white again has quite a few good-looking options. What should white do? So the position is quite closed, with all these pawns still left on the board. So white would definitely, with the black king in the middle still want to open up the position. So you should be looking at pawn breaks. One pawn break potentially is e4. You should watch out for f4, trapping that bishop over there. Another pawn break could be f4, trying to capture over there and open up my castle down there. Of course, I should consider after f4 my opponent closing up. That's another thing. And another pawn break would be h4 also. So there's three, and there's more. a4 is also another pawn break, hitting that pawn structure, because whenever this pawn captures or goes forward, then the one next to him becomes weak. So, and of course, pawn to b3 is even another option. Just simply breaking down the pawns. This was actually quite a decent option, because after that my bishop rejoins that diagonal, and yeah, black continues with the problem. Okay, so yeah, so I didn't go b3, and the idea that I had, it was almost difficult to believe that I had this, and I had to double check just to convince myself that this is actually happening. So the idea that I played, my opponent, guys, what you should also try to do is always ask yourself, what does my opponent want to do next? So he did get rid of my bishop from that diagonal. So of course, I think he would be thinking of castling. He wants to castle. So I found an idea to prevent him from castling. So I went knight to g6 into the enemy camp and threatening the rook in the corner. And of course, stopping him from castling because my knight is, in fact, aiming that way as well. So I'm stopping my opponent from castling. And his rook is under fire, so his rook only has two reasonable moves. And I guessed correct which way he would go. He went rook to g8, trying to eyeballing the knight on g6. Rook to h7, also a possibility. It looks more passive. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. I think the rook on g8 has a lot more potential. Yeah, I could potentially play something like queen f3 again, and of course the other pawn breaks also in mind. So yeah, so my opponent went rook to g8. Okay, so yes, thanks Lone Pawn for the question. So of course the game was intensifying. Couldn't believe what a nice position I was getting, and it was just getting better and better. You need to try to stay calm, like I mentioned before. It is a good idea to take, if you're getting too excited, and trust me, you can get excited. Sometimes you can feel your heart beating. And what I have tried to do in the past as well is to take a few deep breaths, to calm myself down. If my opponent is thinking long, sometimes I can also just get up from the board, keep the position in mind though, not strolling off into the sunset, so to speak, but keeping the position in mind, relaxing a bit, and just walking off a bit of tension. Um, and I could also see it in my opponent's young face, that he is definitely uncomfortable. Um, Yeah, what I can also say is before the game, when we all got seated and we were waiting for the games to start, I think my opponent was one of the most um, happy-go-lucky guy from his teammates. He was very happy, joking, and very relaxed. Um, Obviously, playing a very low-rated player, so it seemed like he was in quite a nice mood. But at this stage, he was already beginning to look quite distressed. Okay, but of course, not to the point where he is cracking. Of course, grandmasters are also, like I said, grandmasters are very tough, and it's not a good thing to show your opponent that you have lost faith in your position. So I could see that he's under pressure, and the signs were there as well with him thinking long. Grandmasters, when they are comfortable, they play fast. Um, so yeah, I was confident, also nervous, but I was also aware that it's still a tough fight ahead. So so let me show you the beauty of this maneuver that I wanted to play. So I went knight to g6, stopping castling. My opponent played the only reasonable move, rook to g8, and I had a bit of a smile inward towards myself when I played my next move. I went knight to e5. So, and I am quite proud to say that my engine that I'm using agreed with my last two moves. So if you look at it from a visual point of view, I go knight g6, rook g8, and my knight goes back. So in this position, I actually just showed my opponent, well, you have such an ugly position, such a horrible position. I can move my knight up and down and give you time to play, and you still have a bad position. So that was quite funny to me, and quite amusing, and it doesn't happen a lot, especially against grandmasters. So yeah, what an arrogant knight. What is your go-to drink during the games? Um, During the game, especially at the Olympiad where there's a easy source of that, I love drinking a lot of water. So I drink a lot of water. Uh, Only downside to that is you might have to go to the toilet a bit more. But I think water is extremely good for you. Um, so I like water. I don't do too much coffee. In fact, I don't think I do too much coffee in general. So I think water and nowadays I also like to have a juice like an orange juice or anything nice, anything natural. Um, in the past, I used to have like gas drinks like Coke and so on. I must admit, sometimes I still do have if there's nothing available. But I try to stay away from gas drinks and also these energy drinks. I try to stay away from it as well. I don't like to have energy drinks. Um, I don't know if it's a mental thing or if it really happens, but I feel like after I have an energy drink, then I have energy, but then I kind of fizzle out afterwards. So it's also important, and there's a lot of uh, info out there and talks by top players talking about what you should have during the game, uh, um, liquids, and something that you eat as well. Try to stay away from bad things like very sugary stuff. It can affect you in a negative way. So things that give you energy is usually good and lasting energy. Um, so yeah, it's also important to look at what you eat during the game and even not at the board. What you eat in general can also help or affect your performance in a good way or a bad way. Thank you, Meg, for asking. So yeah, let's get back to the game. So I needed flexible thinking to execute this knight g6, knight e5 maneuver. So the ball is in my opponent's court. Big problem for him is he cannot castle, of course. So what to do is he's still undeveloped. So now my opponent does the only logical thing left that I kind of expected. So with experience, you start to expect these type of things. And pawn to h5 is typical. When you are in trouble, when you don't have a good position, you need to try to unbalance the position. You need to try to create problems for your opponent, and you need to try to confuse him or try to make him uh, uh, do mistakes. So if my opponent just tries to develop normally, maybe defend over here, get a piece out slowly, and he's not posing any threats, then he will give me more and more time to even get in, let's say, my rooks to the center and eventually crack open the center, especially with his king stuck in the middle. That would just be very easy for me to play. So, objectively speaking, or practically speaking, my opponent needs to do something drastic in order to stand a chance to win. So h5, I think, is a good move, considering the situation. My opponent is going to attack me. It's made it clear, and it's a good practical decision. He's also, I think, from this moment onwards, I started feeling a real pressure because I started also using a bit more time in at this phase. I still had considerably more time than my opponent, but knowing grandmasters, they can play fast, they can do a lot with little time, and my opponent started playing aggressively, and he started showing his presence. So now I'm feeling the pressure, and now I need to stand firm, otherwise I might just lose the plot. So very important, the psychology of the game. You have to stand firm. You have to not allow your opponent to walk over you. uh, you can easily allow it if your mindset is not correct. Uh, that's something interesting in chess psychology, or the way you think or the way you feel during the game is so important. Um, when you are an attacking player, or if you are busy with an attack, your mindset should be positive. You should be thinking, I'm going for my opponent's throat. I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna destroy him completely. And if you if you have that mindset, sorry, if you have that mindset, then you will naturally be looking at aggressive moves, positive moves going forward. But if you are thinking negatively and thinking, I must just hold my advantage, I must just try to stay safe, I mustn't blunder something, then instinctively you are going to look at playing defensive moves first, trying to protect, and you will miss these uh, moves, attacking moves, and brilliant moves going forward. So mindset very important uh, during the game. So h5 was played. My opponent is now telling me he's coming for me. And of course, it might be a tad bit of desperation by from my opponent, but like I said, was expected. So how should I react? I think the move that I played is a good move. Not the best move that the engine recommends, but I think my good move is good enough to keep the advantage that I wanted. So the move that I played was pawn to h4. So I'm not standing back. I'm telling my opponent I'm here and I am not going to allow you to push me back. So pawn to h4. Maybe something more timid would be h3, but that would just allow him to push me back or even go g4. So I didn't want to go back. I've been in control for the whole game thus far, and I need to stay in control. So pawn to h4. Another good option that the engine recommends is pawn to f4. That I think is quite a nice move. Naturally, you don't want to play such a move because you think, okay, g4 or not g4. The fact that you are blocking your bishop, but you're threatening to capture. You're threatening to open up your rook, which is combining with that bishop. So black would probably be forced to play or think about playing something like g4, and this bishop could end up uh, being activated on h4. But white already has a very nice move here um, with queen to b1. A very beautiful move, just combining with this bishop, knocking the f5 pawn, and black doesn't have many options to protect the f5 square. Only move is to play e6, and now to blast things open, we go e4, and this looks very nice. This looks very nice. The center will be blasted open. Black probably needs to capture. Yes, has a black even has a check over there, but we can just block. And if the queen runs back, then we can capture over there. So that should be fine for us. Brilliant position for white. So f4 was also a move. So I decided to go h4, and now I'm also showing my opponent I am here. What I wanted to do was, or what I didn't want to do was, start using up so much time, start sinking into a rut, start thinking passively or negatively, like I said, and let my opponent equalize on the clock. So I needed to keep the pace as well, keep on putting pressure on him. So my opponent captured. He wants to open up lines. He needs to come up with something to attack. Pushing the pawn obviously is not a good idea. He blocks his whole attack, and now all of these squares would be whites for the taking. And e4 again probably would be a nice way to go. So my opponent captures. Good practical move. I recapture. And he leaps forward confidently with knight to g4. So now, yeah, I remember feeling the pressure over here. My opponent finally gets a chance to play active moves. It's quite a nice feeling in chess if you have been stuck in a passive position. You can't move anything. You just need to protect um, to just the moment when you can start playing active moves. It's very nice. So my opponent uh, grabbed that moment. So knight to g4. He's attacking my knight twice, and he's also thinking about opening up his rook. And I've got a few options here. Um, what I can also note, what I noticed is this pawn is hanging, so the knight is blocking it. My queen definitely wants to get there at some moment, and if he would capture my knight, then I would get a check over there, and his king would be uncomfortable. So I wasn't too bothered with the fact that he's attacking my knight twice. There are some reasonable moves like playing knight back and so on, but like I said, I had this this feeling that I need to keep on pressing, keep on applying pressure. I've got the position for it. I need to think positively, and I need to get out more pieces. So in the game, I went queen to f3, developing another piece, also kind of making my king feel more safe. And my queen is doing an excellent job. She's hitting the pawn with the help of the bishop. She's also eyeing this pawn and the rook that's a bit further. And in this way, after I've developed my queen, I can actually get my rooks into the game as well. I've connected my rooks. And one of the tactics that do pop up thinking about this rook that is hanging and my queen that's eyeing it is knight takes b5. That is an idea also lurking around in the position. So yeah, if you want to improve on your tactics, always try to spot the pieces that are not protected. The pieces that are hanging, try to use that to your advantage. Okay, so queen f3. My opponent decided to capture the knight, like I said, opening up his rook, and I had to capture back. And now, of course, he doesn't want to capture over there because I'll capture the pawn with check. So what to do? His knight is standing decently. His rook is on my king's file, but he can't checkmate me with the rook and the knight. So he needs to develop more pieces. Of course, this pawn is also hanging here. So yeah, my opponent can't even play e6 because the pawn is pinned over there. My bishop is eyeing his queen. So he played queen to c7. So queen to c7, and he's eyeing my pawn over there. And okay, he's eyeing the pawn, and he's also unpinning the pawn. So perhaps he could play e6 over there at some point. Taking on f5, I don't think is such a great idea. Maybe he can even just capture over here. And after queen takes e5, my whole attack is gone. If I exchange queens, my whole advantage is basically gone because it's endgame time and my opponent has an extra pawn still. So he's just quickly going to develop his knight and get his other rook into the game. And yeah, these two pieces don't pose such a huge threat anymore. Okay, so all right. So I wasn't really thinking about grabbing the pawn in any event. He's eyeing the e5 pawn of mine, which is really cramping his position. So I decided to go bishop g3 and defend the pawn for the moment. Now I did mention that I don't really want to defend in the position. Sometimes you have to play backwards if necessary. But of course, I also have just plugging in my laptop. But of course, I also have a counter threat of e6 perhaps, with my bishop eyeing the queen over there. So my opponent now has to come up with something, and he played h4. So another interesting move, trying to gain initiative, trying to make things messy. I think another option probably would be to go e6. But okay, maybe I can just continue my development, put the rook on the d file, and maybe even think about throwing the rook onto that lovely square over there. Knight takes b5, still also in the a. So yeah. Hi, scariest name. I did advertise for 7 p.m. I started at 7. I will still be streaming for a while. This lecture on the game that I'm doing right now. It's closer to the end. There's still some action left, so welcome. But I think I might still be streaming a bit afterwards. Maybe play a few blitz games afterwards. So welcome, scariest name. So let's see. I played bishop to g3. My opponent still can't capture on e5 because of the h5 pawn is hanging. And now my opponent went h4. So, what to do? Now, for some reason, I was seeing all my opponent's moves. I expected h4, and I guess the reason behind that is I kept on checking what my opponent wants to do to bother me. I had such a nice position. The only thing that can disturb me is, is something that looks really weird, something that is not slow and normal. So I try to spot all the crazy looking moves, all the moves that can change the character of the position, and if that could bother me at all. So h4 definitely a move that I expected. And now, what to do? To take or not to take? So if you like grabbing pawns, bishop takes pawn is for you. And I kind of instinctively rejected that move because I didn't want to open up a file towards my king. His knight is already aiming towards here, maybe a rook on h8 one day, or even his queen one day swinging across over there. I didn't like the sight of that. Okay, maybe white is still okayish, but I saw no need to grab a pawn over there. So I instead went bishop f4, just keeping more protection for that pawn as well, and still threatening maybe e6. And yeah, so I prefer keeping the tension in the center. So my opponent played e6. What to do? What else to do? I mean, his knight is in the game, his rook in the game, his queen is kind of cut off. So e6, a very logical move, trying to get the lady across to the action. If you look at this chap over there, though, if you look at the bishop, very unhappy. He's blocked in. So the bishop's unhappy. The knight also unhappy, still stuck at the back, and the rook. So if you look at black's three pieces over there, undeveloped, not happy. So you wouldn't find a grandmaster if he had a choice doing this in normal circumstances. Of course, development is very important. So yes, d6 does look very tempting. The square d6 is very juicy. So the question is, after my opponent played e6, I think here came a very critical moment again. And now I also started joining my opponent in some time pressure. My opponent was very low. He was probably, if I can take a guess now from what I can remember, he was okay. He was definitely below 5 minutes, but I'm thinking maybe he was below 3 already as well. But he was under a lot of time pressure, and I was getting closer. I was maybe like 10 minutes left, and it's already pressure. Um, Believe me, if you are playing a long game and you've been ahead on time for so long, and your opponent starts making aggressive moves, and even if you equalize on the clock, your opponent will even have a slight advantage psychologically because you've been ahead on the clock for so long. All of a sudden, you're on the same amount of time. So your opponent has been used to playing quickly, and now you need to adjust as well. So I wanted to keep a small advantage on the clock as well. So I was under pressure, but I was also under pressure because this guy is all of a sudden coming at me. I was attacking him, and all of a sudden he's got some play here. So okay, but it's double edged. I of course have my long term squares. There is a nice juicy square. Um, Now what to do? Um, so like I said, this was quite a critical moment for me, and I had an instinct or an instinctive move here that I wanted to play, but I took a bit more time just to check if there's not better options. So it sounds very simple what I'm saying, but with the clock running, playing a grandmaster who's all over you now, um, it does take some strength to take your time here. So, and like Emmanuel Lasker said, if you see a good move, look for a better one. So, yeah, what I can tell you is my instinctive move was rook a to d1. Getting one of my last pieces into the game, so natural, and threatening rook d6 and beaming up the board. Um, that looks brilliant to me. And I think that's still a good move. I think white is still better over here. Another move that obviously was lurking in my mind was this knight takes b5. This was also quite tempting, but with a quick inspection, you can see that it was not going to work out. I think there's two. Thank you very much for following. I will sort out my alert box after the break. Thank you very much for following. You're welcome. So there's two reasons or two methods that you can use to figure out why knight takes b5 is wrong. Welcome, Shahid, and I'm happy to hear that. So there's two methods to like I said, to discover why knight takes b5 is not good. The one thing is, let's say black. Now, obviously, I'm eyeing the rook over there. Now, let's say black accepts my sacrifice. So in order for this to work, I actually need to capture the rook. But now, looking at the position, I'm now throwing all my pieces to the, or I'm throwing my queen to the other side, and I'm kind of abandoning my king a bit. Because his pieces, the queen is somewhat aiming down there, so to speak, or she can join this way. The knight is there, the rook is there. So I'm going for a rook in the corner, but I'm not really attending to my king. So what I thought during the game was, I just quickly checked and I thought, no, bishop b7. And now my queen would still have to go to a7, and my queen is not part of the game anymore. And you can already see the danger here with the bishop. Now all of a sudden the bishop is a monster bishop down here, eyeing that square. With the help of this rook, there's trouble in paradise all of a sudden. There's big trouble, and my opponent all of a sudden looks very good. I mean, there's moves like h3 in the air. He could capture on e5, and there's actually a very strong tactic here. Knight takes e3 would just make my whole position collapse, because if I accept the pawn, then the rook takes g2 would leave my king completely embarrassed with a nasty discovered check waiting somewhere. Maybe rook takes f2 and king g1, maybe rook g1, and then we have our famous windmill. Yes, the queen cannot capture the rook, I think. So that's the first reason why. So calculating. Okay, I basically gave both reasons there. The first reason that I had a bad feeling about this knight takes b5 was, if my opponent accepts the sacrifice, I will be throwing my pieces into the wrong direction just for a measly pawn and an exchange. My opponent's already up a pawn, so if I regain the pawn and I win an exchange, that rook in the corner is not doing anything. So I'm picking up an exchange, but I'm losing the plot on the other side. So where that matters the most, my opponent will be gaining strength. And then the other reason, of course, I could calculate the bishop b7 and my queen is stuck there, and the immediate tactics work out in his favor. So not knight takes b5, not rook to a d1. I must admit, I wanted to play rook d1 so dearly. But then I just checked again and I asked myself, is there not something more direct? I want to, again, my mindset, I forced myself, my mindset to, I need to attack my opponent. I need to be forcing, I need to break open. And yeah, can anybody suggest what I played? Can anybody take a guess what I played? I'm going to give you a moment. Any takers? If you have seen the game before, then okay, then no need to say. But if this is new to you, if you haven't seen the game, um, yeah, quite an interesting moment, critical moment, and I'm very happy, like I said, that I paused a bit and reevaluated to be a bit more critical. And yeah, lone pawn, you are correct. Pawn to e4, well done. So pawn to e4 was played, and I'm taking no prisoners. I want to break open the position. So now, again, I'm threatening to capture over there. If my opponent captures, then I can even think about pushing forward and unleashing this bishop down there. And I want to open up files. So pawn to e4 was played, and of course my opponent doesn't want to capture because my knight would leap forward, and now my knight is having a party. So that would be instantly lost for black. So after e4, now all of a sudden my opponent is crumbling positionally. He cannot capture the pawn, but his structure is collapsing slightly. So again, he needs to go for desperate measures. And so he went queen to g7. Now I must admit I was still feeling the pressure. I was still quite nervous because now my time was getting low to 5 minutes, and it could possibly have went below 5 as well. Um, so just the sight of a grandmaster doing this, and this pesky knight in front of me, and this pawn potentially uh, also bothering me, I was still under pressure. So after queen g7, I decided to capture on f5. My opponent captured back, and now came the moment. And now, since the queen is not standing on c7 anymore, if I would capture a rook on a8 hypothetically, then the knight would also be angry. So now you're starting to see where I'm tending towards. But again, before I leap forward into one direction, I needed to check my own safety here. And there's no immediate checks with the knight. Yes, there's a push over there, but I thought that my bishop can also just take care of my king for a tempo or two if need be. So I leap forward and knight takes pawn. Knight takes b5, and I was quite happy to be able to play this move. Of course, my opponent was not in control of the position. A lot of times when you're playing strong players and they get into trouble, at one moment you might not be able to play something, but because you respect your opponent so much, because your opponent is such a strong player, sometimes you can forget that sometimes the move is possible later on in the game, and that has happened to me quite a few times locally as well. If you're playing a strong player and he he claims on the board that you cannot make a certain move. Okay, I can't do it. I agree. And then a few moves later, he does something on the other side of the board, and you tend to just forget about that same move. It wasn't possible that time, but it's good to always check again and again. And at this moment, I didn't believe my opponent, and I captured on b5. So knight takes b5 was played. If my opponent would capture on b5 this time, I would capture on a8, and now, look, my queen is still covering g2, so there's no mate. And if my opponent plays the bishop b7 move that was good earlier, then I capture b8 with check, and there's no escape this time. I can even force, okay, capture another piece and force the trade of queens. So that would just be immediate catastrophe. So this time my opponent cannot capture the knight on b5. So what to do? What to do? There's no time to waste. My knight is already poised to enter, and my opponent now played the desperate h3, going for the swindle. And yeah, so now I'm getting below 3 minutes, and and in fact, guys, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 moves earlier. Could be. It could be around here or 2 or 3 moves earlier. Um, like I said, my opponent started playing aggressively, started banging the pieces, not banging that hard, but playing aggressively, showing his presence at the board. And I also felt the pressure, and I also reacted a bit, and I started playing more aggressive. I started playing hard, and I started banging the clock as well. And that also got me psyched up. It got me pumped up. So it's a real fight. It's a slugfest right now. My opponent is trying to intimidate me. I'm saying, no, you're not intimidating me. I'm the one in control. So we're banging the it's going up and down like this. He's really low on time. I want to stay on top of him. I'm also below 3 minutes. And it's funny. Now there's a lot of arbiters in the playing hall because it's a huge hall, lots of players, and quite a few arbiters. And this one arbiter walked past. I guess he was keeping an eye on us, and he came to our board after I made a move, and I banged the clock, and you could see the tension between the two players, and he just came to me and said, "No need to bang the clock. No need to take it out on the clock." So after that, I treated the clock with care, even though I still played confidently, but a lot of times you will see the professional players as well. They don't take it out on the clock. Locally, on the other hand, you'll see a lot of guys abusing the clock. So I think from a professional point of view, there's no need to bang the clock. You can still move fast and still treat the clock with care. Um, so at this point, I am at move 25. I just played 25 moves. My opponent just played his 25th move. So I'm still 15 moves away from gaining my also wanted 30 minutes. So it's a long way. So yeah, okay, I'm fighting to get to the time control because I've got such a nice position. If I get an extra 30 minutes, then I can consolidate and I can kind of stabilize, calm down, and do things perfectly. But at this point, things are wild, things are crazy. And on the other hand, you must also remember I'm thinking I'm playing against a Grandmaster. So let's see what happens. So pawn to h3, what to do, what to do. So I can go queen takes h3, pawn takes h3 optically looks very horrible because of this file that I don't want to open up. So, and of course my opponent is threatening to open up the file by force and open up my king, so he is posing a threat. Pawn to g3 is also probably an option. Yeah, probably an option. You could play h2 check as well in that scenario. I didn't particularly like g3. So, but in any case, I first played an in-between move. I went knight to d6 check. Very useful move. My knight's not hanging anymore. I'm checking the king. I'm attacking the bishop. And I'm attacking that weak pawn over there. So it's looking good. But my king, I need to keep an eye on my king as well. So my opponent now played king to e7. And there's a wide variety of options, but all I can remember here was I needed to simplify, I needed to stabilize, and that's another tip I can give you. If you are low on time and you've got an advantage, try to simplify so that it's easier to play the position. Less pieces on the board, queens off the board, no huge attack on your king. You can easier calculate. But lots of pieces on the board, messy positions. You could miss tactics, so it's easy to miss a tactic instead of playing a simplified position. So I welcome exchanges, and this was also a tempting move. Bishop takes f5 because then black cannot capture, because then I capture knight takes. Then I would fork the two pieces. But of course, my opponent was not going to capture if I play bishop takes f5. So I had to seriously consider what am I going to do about my king. And I played another in-between move, thinking about the time, trying to simplify. So I played knight takes bishop check, again, another check. And my opponent now, unfortunately, he doesn't want to move the king and be another piece down because his attack is, as of yet, not decisive. Um, his attack is suspicious, to say the least. So yes, the queenside development doesn't look good. And yeah, my opponent now forced to capture the knight, and that's what I wanted. So now his rook is at least not standing on that threatening square yet. So I kind of distracted him. And now I could take a moment to breathe at least on the board. So now I could play bishop takes f5. So I got rid of the bishop that was protecting the pawn. Now I got bishop f5, starting to look really good. Rook is hanging. I want to capture the knight. The knight's also hanging. So if my opponent would play something like rook to g8, then a very simple method would be to simply capture either with the queen or the bishop, and any exchanges would definitely favor me in the long run. And of course, I can even play queen takes h3. Yeah, maybe that's even stronger. Because maybe I shouldn't even exchange queens with the black king in the center like that. And everything has disappeared on the king side for black. So my opponent didn't want to uh, give me all these good options. So instead, he played his, an in-between move himself. So he played pawn takes g2. So now he's lost. Oh, can I blunder? That's the question. He wants me to blunder in this little time I have left. And of course, I don't want to capture with the king. Do I want to capture with the queen? I don't know. I don't think I wanted to capture with the queen. I think one of the main moves is maybe a rook f to d1. That would be an excellent move, I think, because now the pawn even on g2 is kind of just sheltering my king for the moment. Of course, I don't want the black queen to end up on h1, but I can capture the pawn at any moment. And yeah, he would still need some time, and I just need one or two more tempi to get to his king. So instead, I played an interesting move here. It needed a bit of calculation. I was a bit nervous playing this move with low time, but I'm happy to say I calculated correctly. Would you say it's one of your all-time favorite games? Yes, I would definitely. If I would write a book one day on my best games, then this would definitely be in that collection. I would rate this game one of my top 3 games that I've played. Definitely one of my favorites. And the game itself, the quality, and the whole atmosphere, and of course the uh, the whole stage it was set at the biggest stage, the World Olympiad, playing against a team full of grandmasters. Yeah, so this is definitely one of my favorites. Um, so yeah, so the move that I played in the game was bishop takes rook. So I figured, okay, I won a rook over there. No more pieces around my king. He probably needs to take my rook. So he captures my rook. And I calculated king takes f1 is safe for me. Bearing in mind, if the knight jumps to h2, going for a fork, my bishop is ready to nip him in the bud over there. So yeah. So looking at the position or considering the time after bishop takes f5, I think just the fact that there's a pawn standing on h3 and there's a knight over here, I wouldn't even resign myself if I was black. But if there was a lot of time on the clock, I think then the resigning in this position would probably be more justifiable. Like I said, considering the time, my opponent was like less than a minute with just living on increment, and myself, I was also probably below 2 minutes by now. It's the adrenaline. It's just the time scramble, so anything can happen with pieces around your opponent's king. I don't think it's I don't think I didn't expect my opponent to resign. Yeah, I was nervous myself just to not blunder. So yeah, I think maybe a tad early to resign. But yeah, so after bishop takes c8, takes king takes. So I had to just double check everything. My king is also now exposed. There's a knight around my king, but my bishop seems to be protecting it quite nicely. Um, so looking at everything, counting the pieces, I'm now a pawn up. My opponent still hasn't developed these guys over there. His pieces don't look that convincing anymore attacking, and his king is the main problem on e7. So he needs to do something. So he decided to develop now knight to d7. What else? So knight d7, and my bishop is hanging. And yes, there's lots of type of tactics. Bishop e7, or even queen takes c6 looked tempting. But one thing again, when you're low on time, try to play solid, try to play simple. And queen takes c6 might be good, but I don't want to leave my king alone. And I instead simply played bishop takes d7, swapping off since I'm ahead. King takes d7, and yeah, I really felt the pressure. I think I went below 1 minute just to find the final touch here, and I was quite happy with what I found. Just again, let's see what Leighton said here. Would you say the GM maybe underestimated you when he played his opening? Uh, I don't know. He used the Dutch defense before. That's why I prepared the setup. It is the Dutch defense is one of his openings. I would say any player should have a few lines against each opening. Against d4, you should have 1 or 2 openings you play. Against e4, you should have 1 or 2 openings you play. Just to have some options if you're playing. It depends on the game. If you want to play solid, then you have this opening. If you want to play a bit more risky but play for a win, then you have that opening. So, okay, the opening choice isn't that much of a surprise, I would say, because the Dutch is a bit more risky, but you can also play for a win. So, with that regard, uh, I would say my opponent chose the opening that he feels like he can crush me the easiest with. If he underestimated me a bit, I think yes, maybe he underestimated me a bit because he could have castled earlier and just played a bit more solid. So yeah, I think he did slightly relax in the opening, which caused him long-term problems. Okay, so king takes d7. What to do? So I'm low on time here, super nervous, and yeah, I played an instinctive move here. There's a general principle that says get all your pieces into the attack. If you don't, if you look at all your pieces, find the worst piece and get it into the attack. So I went rook to d1 check, and the engine fully agrees with me. That's the best move. My opponent now doesn't have lots of places to run. He doesn't want to go to e6. I'm also crashing through on c6. Yes, I'm still keeping an eye on the king, so to speak. So my opponent instead went king c7. It looks ugly, but I mean, he has to run. So yeah, I think I missed the best move, but I've still played relatively well. And during the game, I actually also thought that I was quite happy with this move because he paused after my next move, realizing that he doesn't have much play. So in the game, I played a very nice move. I think this is one of my favorite moves of the game. No, actually, not this one. Actually, sorry, not this one. It's leading up to that. So I played e6 check. But maybe rook d6 was better. Maybe rook d6 was better because I'm threatening to enter on c6. And if he protects, then perhaps e6 now, opening up my bishop, threatening check, and he cannot run really. So I think this is completely busted. He cannot go to b6 because I enter over there. So this was a one way to win. Okay, so I played e6 instead, check. That also looks tempting. Now my opponent can't go king b7 because of the double attack. So he had to run to b6. Okay, if he goes to c8 again, just to point out the obvious, that would be mate in 2. So he had to run to b6. And this is where one of my favorite moves comes in the game. Yeah, it's one of the best moves. Engine likes it as well. So this was the moment where I had less than a minute and I had to find something. So I played pawn to e7. What a nice move. So the pawn keeps on marching. I still have everything locked up for the moment here around my king. Even if my opponent plays something like rook to h8, threatening to come in, my queen still keeps an eye on that square. My bishop keeps an eye on that square. So the king is relatively safe. The black queen doesn't want to capture the pawn because I simply capture a piece. And yes, amongst other things, I'm also threatening rook to d8. With the support of the pawn, my opponent would be in big trouble. So lots of threats, and it was just nice to see how the pawn cuts the board in half, so to speak, where the black queen struggles to come to the king's rescue. So after e7, my opponent now tried his luck and played pawn to c3, just trying to somehow get into to an end game, or so to speak. I don't know, maybe he was hoping for something like queen takes, and maybe he could play queen takes pawn now, or maybe just swap off, just somehow get something to play. So, but of course he's doing this because we're still both low on time. This is move 34, so I still have 6 moves to make. But after c3, it became clear what I was going to do. I just had to double check, and this was also part of the idea behind e7. So I went in for the kill, and I went rook to d6, threatening c6, and now my opponent unfortunately doesn't have many options to protect himself on c6. So he played the only reasonable move, rook to c8. And now for the final touch. What did I do? White to play. Who can take a guess what I played? And quite a nice final move, so this also makes the game memorable. Quite a few cute moves, memorable moves that I made in this game. Any takers? Thank you, Babiki. You have given me the correct move. So my last move for the game was pawn forward to e8, queening, and with my 2 queens on the board, my opponent finally resigned. So, so the idea is, of course, if he captures the queen, then my other queen, my original queen, will crash through with mate soon to follow. Yeah, so thank you very much. That was my game against Mohammed Dastan, international grandmaster from Turkey, with a rating of 2568, I think. And yeah, this was one of my most memorable games. Lots and lots of things that happened during the game. The opening was interesting. I got a slight pull in the opening. My opponent couldn't castle. And then in the middle game, there was a struggle. I had this cute maneuver with knight g6 and knight e5 back, stopping him from preventing him from castling. And then the real dogfight came afterwards, when he started pushing back and attacking me, and then it was to and fro. And yeah, it was a struggle. It was a fight to stay positive, to to um, to to keep the pressure, and yeah, just playing against a grandmaster, you always remind yourself about it, and you have to double check sometimes. Grandmasters, what I can tell you, they what I can tell you about grandmasters, they are very strong theoretically in the opening. So I did well to catch him out a bit in the opening. That's I think where I started off well with. Their technique in the end game is also very good. Most grandmasters guys, their end game technique is very good. So that's one thing I can recommend to you if you want to improve, you want to be a strong player. Do study your end games because um, I always feel under pressure playing a grandmaster that if I don't get an advantage or if I go into an end game, you need to know your stuff. They play end games fast and they know their technical end games. So yeah, but luckily my opponent didn't even manage to get to the end game. Did I discuss the game with my opponent afterwards? No, I didn't. The game was so tense, and I'm not even sure if my opponent could speak English. But my opponent was also not happy with the result of the game, so no discussion of the game afterwards, unfortunately. Um, did your team win this match? Now, something that I can say about um, this matchup, our top board, our board one player from South Africa, is an international master, and he was playing a grandmaster with a rating of at least, I think his rating was 2,600. So their board one player being a grandmaster outrated our board one by almost 200 points. And their board two grandmaster also outranked our board two international master Watuko Besi, also almost with 200 rating points. And my opponent uh, had 380 points above me, and on board four something similar. But if you looked at the match, if you look at the games, and I think my game was actually the first game done from all four, or perhaps I'm not sure about Mabusela on board four. Maybe he was done before me. I'm not sure. Either I was the first one done or the second one. But but all of the matches were tough, and for quite a while, our board one seemed to be holding their board one 2600. Our board two Watu was also playing quite an interesting King's Indian against their board two Grandmaster, and I think actually he had his chances there. At some moment, I think he was slightly better, so it was looking good there for from a match perspective on board one and two, and then I was busy winning, so I was excited. And on board four, Mabusela had a typical French sacrifice on the board against his opponent. I think it was some rook exchange sacrifice on his opponent's king, and his king was open. And I also got excited about that game because I thought Mabusela was actually also looking quite good. So for a moment or two during the match, I actually thought that we could win the match, and that is quite possible if us from South Africa train more and 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 play these type of intensive matches more. Because I think, okay, at the end of the day we lost 3-1. I was the only one that got a point, and the other three lost. But I think it's the intensity, and if we could play much more of these events, and not just collapse during certain moments, then I think, like I said earlier, our ratings, I think South Africa is a bit underrated, and that matchup was a lot more tight than the result, and than the result actually displayed. And looking at the match, looking at the actual games, so I think South Africa has a big future if we train properly and play, get exposed to more matches like this, and a lot is possible. Um, my let's see. Yeah, my lecture's name is How to Be the Grandmaster. So I gave this lecture this title not to disrespect any grandmasters in any way. Grandmasters are still grandmasters; they're super strong. But I did this lecture to show people and myself growing up as well. I thought grandmasters are invincible. They super strong. They're unbeatable. So hopefully after this lecture and the others to follow, if I could just spark the brain or the brains of future South African young GMs, then I would be happy. And yeah, so it is possible to be grandmasters. It is possible for us South Africans and anybody that's not a grandmaster to go up to that level. It just takes a lot of training, a lot of practice, and also a lot of belief. You need to believe in yourself. Even if you have a winning position, you can still play bad moves. So yeah. So yeah, guys. Um, you can still drop questions if you want to. Um, thank you for watching this lecture on how to beat the Grandmaster Part 1. Like I said, there will be in future more parts to the series. I hope it was entertaining. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break and yeah, I think we can maybe yeah, okay, maybe I'm checking the time now. Okay, I think we should call it a night. I think I'll play some blitz. Tomorrow there will be tomorrow there will be more blitz to play. Unless you guys want me to play a few blitz games. If you guys say I should stay a bit longer, then I will. Um, I will be having a program for this weekend. Tomorrow there will be some blitz again. Sunday I have something special as well. Okay, so I see more blitz, please. So okay, so what I'm gonna do is let's take a short break. Give me about just 5 to 10 minutes, guys. And then I will be back with just a few blitz games. All right, so yeah, like I said, if you like what you saw, follow me and tell your friends about me. Tell your chess, all the chess lovers out there to join Twitch, sign up to Twitch, and follow Calvin Klaasen Chess. So I'm going to take a brief break. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. I'll be back right now.
Okay, guys, I'm back. Let's get going with the playing. So what I'm gonna do now is I am I am going to play some blitz, but I think yeah, let's get some music going. So please, guys, just give me some feedback on the music. If it's too loud, okay. If it's too soft, it's not a problem. But I don't want you to be drowned in my music. And so yeah, so that I can adjust it. Let me just read here one last comment. Yeah, okay. So my videos that are on on Twitch, they will expire at some point. So I think I should. I do not have a YouTube channel yet, but I'm going to look into getting something like that so that I can post my videos on there for your convenience, so you can check it out again. Yeah, so I will do that. And any more questions or anything like that, you guys can also email me um, by kelvinklaasen@yahoo.com. So yeah, okay. So I'm gonna get some music going, and then we're gonna play some. I'll see how my signal is for Blitz. I'll play a Blitz game. If it's bad, then I'm gonna switch over to Rapid. Okay, so let's see. Let's make it 3 straight. Like I've been having some problems with my signal. I don't know if it's chess.com the last few days, so we see how things go. And if I have too many issues with my time, then I'm gonna switch over to some increment. That seems to be slow for the moment. Filter settings. Where's my filter settings? Scary's name. Yeah, this is way too slow. Something is not right here. This setting. Something is wrong with my settings because I'm playing. This app is way too slow. Oh, that filter. I thought you meant a different filter. Scary's name. So I'm ahead on the board, but my time is way behind. So I'm gonna have to check my settings after this, guys. Because I have to try something wild now, seeing that my clock is running so quickly. I'm struggling a bit on the clock here, guys, so I'll answer your questions just now. It's very slow from my side. Okay, so my opponent resigned here, luckily for me, because everything is super slow. So, yeah, let me see. If you guys are interested, then I am just going to stop the stream and then check my settings, and then I'll start another stream continuing with the blitz within the next 20 minutes. Let's see. Okay, so I will adjust my filter settings for the next games. I think the maximum or minimum rated opponent I can play is 50 rating points below me and higher. Matches, potentially we can organize matches. I didn't want to start my streaming career with just matches, but for future reference we can look at playing matches. Okay, so guys, I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop the stream for now, but if you are keen to watch, then I'm going to try to get everything sorted for within the next 20 minutes. So, okay, so stay tuned, and thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.